So, first question, and I'm tossing up to you, sir. For the 7th time in 8 seasons, Clemson is picked to win the ACC in the preseason with 104 votes. NC State was picked second with 38 votes. Is there any competition for Clemson this season in the ACC, or is it a foregone conclusion that the Tigers are going to win it all?
Okay, so let me ask you, can I ask a clarifying question, Vince?
Of course.
Are we talking about the regular season, the conference title game, or both?
I believe we are talking about both.
Okay.
I believe we're talking about both.
Okay. So, I mean, it's your decision, so we can talk about whatever. It can be from whatever you want. So,
Sure.
For me, when I look at it, I do believe that they will win. I have them picked to win the ACC, but it is not going to be as easy as it's been in the past for a host of reasons. Number one, other teams in the league are better.
Okay.
I think Wake Forest has gotten better. Now, like Clemson is kryptonite to Wake Forest. I mean, they can look great for we saw it last year. I mean, they look great rolling, beating people, and then they go play Clemson and get curb stomped because they just number one, it's a bad matchup, right? Because they like to do that real slow mesh. You can't do that stuff again't Clemson.
You got that front seven.
You better get rid of that ball quick, son.
Right.
So you can't do that. I mean, and you can't do it. I mean, their lowest point total this season was 27 against Clemson. Their next lowest point total, I think, was like 35 in week 3 against Florida State. As far as regular season. So, but you look, last year, I mean, first of all, what's funny is they didn't win the ACC last year.
No, they didn't.
They didn't win the Atlantic. I mean, Pitt and Wake Forest played in that. So Wake Forest won the Atlantic last year, even though they lost to Clemson in the head-to-head. But I think NC State's going to be better, although Dave Doran still has to prove to me that he can be sort of a how do I put this, Vince? Can you build on a season?
Sure.
And I think that's
Clemson too.
That's held him back in past years with him is I felt like, boy, they're on the verge of really doing something, and then they would kind of underachieve the next year, right? And so that's a concern, but you look at some of their road games this year, at Boston College. If BC's healthy, BC has given Clemson games in recent years. I mean, They almost beat them last year at Clemson. They almost beat them 2 years ago at Clemson. Remember, Djokovic got him a lead, and then Clemson went down and scored late to win that game. And so BC's not afraid of Clemson. And so, this year it's at Boston College, and it's right after you have back-to-back games against Wake and NC State. And you got Florida State a week later. So BC's kind of that trap game type of thing for Clemson.
Sure.
The Notre Dame game won't count. Florida State's on the road, and then they play Miami late. So the schedule's challenging, but they could still lose a game in the ACC and still win it. So regular season wise, I do think they're the leader. I don't think they're just going to dominate the conference like they did a few years ago. And honestly, some of the past Clemson teams wouldn't dominate it the way they did back then, because I think part of the thing is not only is Clemson coming down a little bit, but I do think the rest of the league is getting better. I really do.
Sure.
Here's the second part.
Okay.
I believe the ACC for this season has eliminated the divisions for the 2022 season, correct?
It's for next year.
It's for next year?
Next year, yeah.
Okay, so if they still have divisions this year.
Miami was picked to win the other division.
Okay, so they are going to still have divisions. Okay, because that's when it's going to get real interesting, because then they become the Big 12, where you could beat a team in the regular season that's, and then play them in a rematch. Now that's somewhat doable now, but in the new thing, remember the years that Clemson won the ACC before Florida State imploded, and they won tough games against Florida State? Well, in some of those years, Florida State was the second best team in the league, but it didn't matter. They weren't going to play them in a rematch because you had the Coastal there, and they're both in the Atlantic.
Right.
So that's going to be interesting. But of course, as you said, I wasn't sure when that was going into play. If it was this year or next year.
I just read that today. So this is the last year.
That's going to make it very interesting. So regular season wise, I think so. The other thing too, Vince, is when you look at the Coastal, I think that's the side that's needed the most improvement, right? Because in recent years, the best, second and third best and fourth best teams are often in the Atlantic. I mean, you could argue that in many years in the college football playoff era, that the second, third, and fourth best team in the conference was from the Coastal.
Agreed.
And really, there was twice that wasn't necessarily the case. This past year was not necessarily the case with Pitt. I would have liked to have seen a Clemson-Pitt game, in the ACC title game. I think that would have been very fun to watch. As far as that matchup, because I think Pitt was the best team in the ACC last year. Clemson and Pitt did not play each other, or they did play each other last year at Pitt. Pitt beat them by 10. I would have liked to seen that rematch, right? By the end of the year. But anyway, they got Wake Forest. I think when you look at the division now, however, Miami's getting better. They got a really good young quarterback. That makes them dangerous. Pitt's gotten better, although I think they're going to fall off quite a bit after last year with all they lost. I think North Carolina's getting better. They're one of my sleeper teams. They went from overrated in last year to underrated this year, in my opinion.
Okay.
So I do think that division is getting tougher. And then I want to see what the new coach at Virginia Tech is going to do. Because the thing about Justin Fuente had players.
I forgot.
He didn't use them.
Yeah.
And so, I want to see what Pry is going to do there. Brent Pry is going to do there as the new head coach. So I just think it's going to be, it's a thing of, you're seeing this with Clemson, right? Where they're slowly coming down, but other teams are slowly getting better. They're still the best team.
Yes.
But it's just not as easy. The margin for errors are going to be a little thinner than it was.
Yes.
Now, it won't be perceived that way. It's going to be perceived as a massive fall off by Clemson. Is how it's going to be, because the ACC is not getting any respect. And then, as you guys talked about yesterday, it bled into basketball last year.
Oh, yeah.
It was the most absurd thing that the ACC was getting kicked in the teeth the way it was last year.
The fact that the team that finished second in the ACC had to do a play-in game.
Right.
Who
beat Kentucky.
Right.
It's
ridiculous. Ridiculous. I'm sorry.
So we're seeing that. And so, yeah, I think the league is getting better. I think it's just Florida State's going to be better. Are they going to be as good enough to beat Clemson? I don't know, but they're getting better. Wake Forest is getting better. Louisville's is on the ascension. They're going to be better. I think Malik Cunningham this year has got a chance to be a really dynamic run throw quarterback. And we did a top 15 quarterback breakdown. Ryan and I did at Irish Breakdown, and we had several guys from the ACC in there. It's a really good year. We had Devin Leary in the top 5, the kid from NC State. We had Sam Hartman in the top 15. I think he's a little overrated. I've seen people have him like 6 or 7. I don't think he's that high because he doesn't play well in big games.
He's a good solid great numbers. Yeah, he's a good solid quarterback.
Huge numbers.
Yeah, right.
But it's just like, it's system numbers.
Yeah.
We had Malik Cunningham in there. That was because I'm a lot higher on him.
Okay.
We had Phil Dracovic in there. We had Tyler Van Dyke from Miami in there. And we had Brendan Armstrong in there. There's a lot of really good quarterbacks in the ACC, and I've always felt that if you've got that kind of big game quarterback, that guy can put up numbers, then you're going to have a chance to have those upsets.
Yeah,
you need the quarterbacks, and the ACC has been desperately lacking big time quarterbacks. I didn't finish the sentence earlier. I said last year with Pitt was another time. The last time that I thought the Coastal had a team that could maybe go hang with Clemson was North Carolina with Marquise Williams. You remember that team a few years ago? They actually gave Clemson a bit of a game for a while, right. And that was like an 11-2 North Carolina team. That's a really good North Carolina team. But other years they're playing like 7-5 Pitt, who lost that game and then lost a bowl game to finish 7-7. Right. They've played some very mediocre Virginia Tech teams. I think they played like Duke one year.
Yeah, I'm happy they're getting rid of the divisions. Yeah. Or at least not. They shaking them up. Because
it's cyclical. And I think it's an overreaction because there was a time not that long ago in history where a division with Miami, Virginia Tech, North Carolina, and Pitt would have been pretty flippin' formidable.
True.
That's the thing is we always look at things of where they are now, but it would not that long ago. That division would have been pretty darn good. And honestly, with some of the coaching hires that they've made, I like the hire at Virginia Tech. I think he's going to recruit well. They're going to be more tough-nosed, and he can't be worse than Justin Fuente. I love the hire of Mario Cristobal at Miami. I really like that hire.
I think they're going to be.
I think Tony Elliott's going to do better at Virginia Tech maybe than some people think he will. And then, of course, Matt Brown's doing a good job. And I love the hire of Mike Elko at Duke. The best chance you have to maximize your roster from a recruiting talent standpoint is by hiring a guy like Mike Elko, who's a great recruiter. And a guy that's an Ivy League graduate. He played at Penn. He understands how to coach and recruit and coach smart players.
Sure.
So I think that the ACC Coastal is kind of on the ascension, and of course now they're going to get rid of it.
All right.
it is what it is. But
good stuff. No, I mean, I'm not going to go through everything that you just said because that was you nailed it. I think Clemson's kind of dialing down a little bit. I think everybody's kind of, and you could even say that across college football too. I think Clemson is kind of coming down a little bit, and I think some teams are going to get closer to Clemson as they move forward. But that's a conversation for, I don't know, maybe our college football channel eventually. Just saying, throwing it out there.